Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. We're going to do episode 3, the review of the debate between Garland Farms and Jeffrey Phillips on The Crucible. Please go check out episode 1 and 2 if you just jumped on to episode 3. Let's present. Let me see. Just want to see if this is cool. Just checking like a different format of share screen. Got it. Sorry for the delay, guys. All right. All right, let's do this.
Cracking all these pecans, and I'm processing them to remove the nut meat for human consumption. And I'm grinding up the shells and feeding that to animals. And the shells weigh 60% of the nut, and the nut meat weighs 40% of the nut. Then you can claim that 60% of pecan is fed to animals.
Sorry, we already saw that. So again, JD is trying to say that when you look at a nut, you have the shell and you have the nut inside. The shell is pretty much useless to humans. It's the nut inside. In this instant, the nut is made to make seed oil, and all that seed oil is for human consumption. The leftover useless aspect, the shell, that humans can do nothing with, that happens to be a greater portion of the whole nut. All right, so meat 40%, let's say, the shell 60% of its composition. So we could technically say that the useless part, that goes all to the animal. It's 60% of the soybean, therefore 60% of the soybean is fed to the animals. Then after the leftover soybean mash, the industrial residue that is left after the extraction also is fed. So a large portion, once the oil is removed, is fed to the animal, but it's useless material and it's leftover waste. That's pretty much what JD is saying, but we're going to go back to 25 because we already this will further be discussed again, this whole topic about the soybean. I think pistachio or pecan is being used as an example by JD.
Eaten by the animals, I'm arguing that, yeah, that you can't, like I said, invalidate the impact on the environment for animal use by them eating this byproduct, if that makes sense.
Well, what first came along was the soybean oil. The oil was the first thing that was being extracted. Back in the 50s, up until the 50s, they were taking the leftover industrial waste, piling it up and burning it. But if you look into waste profits, Google that, profit from waste is all industries are pursuing ways to, instead of having to pay to have industrial waste disposed of, to find a way to sell it. And that's what the soybean industry did.
They even did this with cottonseed oil, the residue from the cottonseed, whatever they were using that for. Well, the oil was, again, this waste product that they had to deal with. So they were using the oil as a lubricant, and they decided to further process this cottonseed oil, and Procter and Gamble actually got involved, and then they were making at one point soap, but this evolved eventually into the big Crisco campaign. Therefore, all of these seed oils, dirt cheap, 3 times less expensive than olive oil, for example. So everyone is buying these seed oils, then they're hydrogenating it, filling up the bonds with hydrogen. So this becomes kind of like a replacement for lard, butter. Well, they again make it solid, and it becomes margarine. So all of the previous animal fats that we were consuming, and by the way, the only way that we were receiving any fat soluble vitamins or essential 3 and 6 in an appropriate ratio was eating animal foods. We got extremely sick at the start of the 20th century as the seed oil started to enter the food chain, right up to the point of it being 10%, and probably more now, 10% of the calories consumed by the West. Probably other areas. China's big on it.
But no, like I said, I don't feed soybean meal to my animals. I don't feed corn to my animals. I do regenerative grazing practices. So much like I'm pursuing the same plan that Joel Salatin has been doing for probably 16 years now. And with doing that, you're able to sequester carbon from the atmosphere, put it back in the soil where it has been robbed by crop agriculture. And that increases soil permeability to water. It increases the soil health, increases productivity of natural fauna, natural prairie grasses, and biodiversity. And so every time you bring the animals in for a rotation, they eat about a third of it. They poop and pee on about a third of it, and then they stomp on about a third of it. And so that leaves it poised and ready for a flora fauna explosion that happens the next time it rains.
This is a natural, regenerative, renewable resource for building the world's soil. You need animal input. You need manure, urine. You need, anyways, you need these things. And without those, you're relying on petroleum-based fertilizers as well as mining. So the stuff that you're mining also will be a non-renewable. It's a finite resource. So that's a dead end. And we need the ruminant animals. You need the ruminant animals to rebuild the topsoil. This means that the major resource to feed these animals is abundant and cheap. And this food for the ruminant animals will only increase and increase and increase, because this is the exact natural symbiotic relationship of ruminant animals with the soil, as well as air, the methane, the CO2, the amount of ammonia. Okay, these are natural processes that were occurring way before modern civilization occurred. Now, it'd be interesting to look at, for example, ammonia. Is there what we're doing with the manure is stockpiling it, because the animal farmers would make way too much money selling the manure to the plant crops.
Now, this is happening on pasture, not in a plowed field where the soil is hydrophobic. We're talking about a pasture where the carbon in the soil has been improved so that the water can actually soak into the ground, which is what it can't do in the fields where the corn and soybeans and the other crops
like I was saying, the ammonia that's created, the CO2, the methane, these are gases that the ruminant animals create. We have to go look at the other man-made carbon emissions that are occurring. We have to go look at the methane that other human activities are creating, as well as ammonium. Don't forget that if we're not using manure and animal input, pretty much everything is based on fossil fuel to create these synthetic and petroleum-based fertilizers.
Vegan menu is derived.
So would you agree though that this is a minority of how most of the animals are produced though for animal product production and meat, correct?
Okay, so let's say, obviously it is a minority. So if the vegans are saying we must do a huge paradigm shift, a great reset, and go plant-based, then we can easily say we've gone off track, a bit with the livestock, but it's a really easy haul. It's literally like, oh, we're not using that crop anymore, so you guys can do whatever you want with that crop, and or the crops can be pushed aside, and we can have ruminant animals. Like I said, is an ideal system would be where farmers have crops planted, and you have the ruminant animals, herds grazing, and then there's a network between the farms where the cows can go there and fertilize. So huge kind of systems where there is a rotation. The animals are the crops not being grown time after time. Now what they do is they rotate between corn and soy. I guess that's a good rotational. Maybe they pull out different nutrients. That's the way they're replenishing the soil. The topsoil is a complex matrix and microcosm of microbiota, all sorts of organisms. And the tilling is kind of like, think of it as going from the air with this big rake coming down and just ripping through our towns and our infrastructure. That's pretty much what's happening.
Correct.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a minority. However, it's growing. In fact, there are
Just want to check one thing, guys. Just have to check. I'm paranoid about having not pressed the volume. That's what happened my first attempt at episode 2. So just kind of still a little bit paranoid. Okay. Let's continue. And away we go again.
carbon credits that farmers can now become eligible for. There's several different carbon credit programs that people, livestock regenerative rotational grazers can actually profit from doing this. So it's it's something that's actually getting more and more prevalent. However, the point that I'm making is that, yeah, you could get rid of all of the livestock. I know that vegans are just like frothing at the mouth to remove the animals from the earth, which is ironic.
Have you found that funny?
But if you were to remove all of the livestock, then what you've got now is no reduction in the soybean crop, because only 7% of the soybeans are actually grown exclusively for livestock feed. The rest of what's fed to livestock is industrial waste left over after processing to produce a good that goes solely to human consumption. Cows do not drive vehicles. They do not burn biofuel. They do not drink alcoholic beverages. They do not consume high fructose corn syrup.
The transportation of their products requires,
the transportation of their products, transportation of all of the plant food crops and everything like that, as well as the middle of the grocery store, which is all processed plant product. They're all used gas, right? They have to be transported too. So there's no point in bringing up that on either side because it's pretty much equal.
Yeah, well, the same thing can be not only can the same thing be true, I said of the vegan menu, but also all of the diesel that's burned in the process of all the destructive tillage, all of the harmful and deadly pesticides that are responsible for producing the vegan menu are also petroleum.
I mean, Jeffrey and Ali are pretty good listeners. I mean, it seems like during this they seemed opened, they seemed interested. I don't know how that went after. I think I heard secondhand from somebody that he was basically saying that JD was appealing to conspiracy theories, which I don't want to put things in Jeffrey's mouth. That might be a rumor. But anyways, at this point, it kind of looks like, they're trying to listen. Ali concedes about the amount of seed oil. Also concedes that yeah, uh, not all the soy, the majority of soy is being fed. It's being processed, and what's useless to humans is being fed to animals. That's a problem with statistics.
Derived. The nitrogen is petroleum derived. Both.
No, I just want to step in here. When you say the vegan menu, you're painting a picture of all meat coming from a regenerative type situation that you yourself run, but it's not. So
no, not really. See, this started out with Ali reading statistics, and then implying that this is bad, environmentally bad because of the animal industry. And he's saying, well, you know what? You remove all the ruminant animals, you'll still have the exact same destructive soy crops, and you'll still have the exact same amount. Because again, the amount of soybeans are majority for oil. They take advantage of all the leftover waste, and they feed the animals. If the ruminant animals disappeared from Earth, you would still have the same amount of soybean crop, because the oil industry, the seed oil industry at the moment is far, far from dissipating. If not, it's just increasing and increasing worldwide. So that's what JD is trying to say. In respect to soybean, you guys are using it for oil. Leftover garbage is being fed to the animal, and then the statement's being made, look how destructive animal farming is, and look at how much food it steals from human. That is completely debunked at this point.
we're talking about, it's not the vegan menu really, it's the omnivore, the meat eater menu as well. If we can.
Yes, I know, but Ali, the typical vegan, and you guys may be a little bit more laxed. You're like vegan light, more reasonable, in a way. You know what? I lost my thought. I'll remember when we play.
We can disagree. I've seen different figures about the percentages of these crops that are fed to livestock in the direct grain, but still, how the system currently stands. I mean, this is the problems you're talking about still apply.
Yeah, like, I mean, if everyone was to go vegan, this is the vegan dream. They might not be so possibly dogmatic about it, but the typical vegan, which is not a diet, it's a completely a movement, and to the point of not wearing leather and stuff like that. So do not talk about the destructive nature of soy and then pin that on animals. Okay, they shouldn't be eating any of it. Not the soy cake meal, not the bean itself, nothing. The amount of crops, if we end up going completely plant-based, then we'll need more of the monocropping of soy, because that'll be, just like typical vegans, a pretty major source of plant-based protein.
Apply to agriculture as well. Do you agree?
If I snapped my fingers right now and all livestock on this earth disappeared, how much of the soybean crop, how much of the world's, how much percentage wise would that decrease the world's soybean production?
See, this is surprising. It's like all we've been talking about for about half an hour is these analogies about nuts and nuts and the shell and the composition. We were talking over and over. Here's the soybeans. They're being used for oil, but they're taking advantage of the waste. They're going to feed that to the animal. So I think this is where JD says, if we snap our fingers, remove all the ruminant animals, how much is that going to affect soy? Pretty much, if you understand the last half hour, you'd probably say it won't have any significant difference, since we're still going to grow as many soybeans, because the demand, even if ruminant animals are gone, the demand for oil remains. So JD is trying to get them to say there wouldn't be any statistical difference. And this is 30 minutes of basically trying to say the same thing.
Are you saying the market effects, if we snapped our fingers, removed all the livestock, what it would do to the soybean production?
Yeah.
I'm asking you, how much, you're telling me that the livestock industry is responsible for 80% of the destructive soybean croppage. So if we remove all the livestock from the earth, percentage-wise, how much is that going to decrease soybean production?
It's a couple percentages.
Well, it's 70. So looking at this figure, so this is the soy, not the soybeans, but of the crop. 76 is given for animal feed. So you're
right. 76 is given for animal feed because that aspect is useless to humans.
Saying this, I'm sure the industry will have to deal with these. The soy industry would deal with these byproducts. They wouldn't have a market to sell them.
That's true. They wouldn't have a market to sell them. But has the market for oil changed at all? No. So you're still going to be using the same amount primarily, a few percentage difference. You're still going to be using all that oil for human consumption. Yeah, they might, try and figure out, maybe they'll make cereal, vegan soy flakes or something. And maybe we can just eat the soy meal and the soy cake. I mean, cake. I mean, how can cake be bad? I mean, cakes, it's wonderful.
But the market would adjust.
Nope. No, what I'm asking you is what's destructive is the soybean industry, the growing of the soybean. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm not talking about the soy products that after they've been processed for human consumption.
Let's speed it up a little.
I'm talking about the soybean industry. The soybean industry is causing deforestation. It's causing oceanic dead zones. It's causing 3 times as much. What was the pollutant that you guys brought up earlier? It was the ammonia. The synthetic nitrogen for crop agriculture releases 3 times more ammonia than livestock does. 3 times more. So soybean agriculture produces soybeans. So when we talk about the soybean industry and you want to remove the soybeans from that picture, that's not an intellectually honest way to approach this subject. We have to bring the soybean into the picture because that's what destructive soybean agriculture is producing, is soybeans. So if you remove knowing that 90% of all the soybeans are processed to remove the oil, and 100% of that oil is being consumed by human beings, and 7% of the soybeans are grown exclusively for human consumption as whole soybeans, if you get rid of all livestock today, percentage-wise, how much will you reduce the destructive soybean production?
You won't reduce any of it because the majority is oil. We're still going to continue with the same rate, if not more, of oil from the soybean.
It's hard to say because I mean, like we were talking about this byproduct, the use of byproducts for animal feed is an industry in itself and has, that it fetches a profit. So I couldn't give you a number off the top of my head, but I just
Yes, they will lose profit because then it will be waste that they can't use. So it'll be organic matter that will probably decompose. Although the leftover, yeah, I mean it's organic matter. Just throw it in the dirt. It's not just manure. All organic matter is beneficial. I might be wrong, but it makes sense.
don't agree that I guess the part about your sorry.
If we get rid of livestock, because that's the question, how are they going to be making a profit off of livestock feed?
Well, they wouldn't any longer, and I think that would affect. I would think that would affect the production of soybean. I think it affect.
It wouldn't affect the production of soybean because it's all the majority for oil.
The subsidies on soybeans.
Okay, so
and then also it's important to point out that I'm just as a vegan, I'm not advocating for all of the livestock to be removed from the earth. So
okay, that's why I call you vegan light, because it's the first time, and I like this. I like that they're moderate, that they're not extreme. But I've never heard a vegan acknowledge that we can't abolish it,
so to speak. And as well as I don't discount, or I'm not saying that there's not a possibility for regenerative activities for animals. I just think that it's a slippery slope once we start integrating these animals into the food system and as animal foods, and we're right back to mass exploitation, factory farming, which I think we both agree.
No, because you just said we can use it for regenerative. You can use it to build the soil. That's why they just said we don't advocate them personally, the removal of all ruminant animals, but they're willing to exploit, and vegans would call it exploitation. They're willing to exploit them and control where they move for the manure and the positive effects on the land. But they, which is normal for a vegan, but they don't want to eat them, because then they said that we would return to the feedlot grain industry. No, we just said that it's a very easy fix. No, they will not. You just said that at the moment they're out grazing, replenishing the topsoil. So we have two choices. We just leave them there and don't eat them, or we grab them and eat them. So why would all of a sudden they're grazing, but once we want to eat them, we put them back in a building, we feed them grain? No, we're not doing that.
That factory farming
Oh yeah.
is detrimental to environments, go across the board. I think we had a conversation about that before. I feel like we had a kind of common ground on that. But yeah, I don't, just to kind of be clear here, I know you're bringing up a hypothetical scenario, but I guess you say all vegans, I don't think that's correct, because me as a vegan, I'm not advocating for, removing all livestock, because I don't.
Okay, so what I'm saying is, if any of which I don't see why you would want to be with them, a vegan gains, freely, the bouncing banana girl, lifting vegan logic, Earthing Ed, all of these guys, these activists that are popular, that form a large group of the vegan videos here, if they hear that, they're going to come after you. Vegans coming after each other is ruthless.
Well, I don't want to get sidetracked on that subject. I know that most vegans want animal agriculture to be abolished. Are you saying that you don't want animal agriculture to be abolished?
I'm saying I think there is how do I put this? There's more studies that need to be done, but there's a space, for having ruminant animals regenerating, like you use the method of rotating them around. I see that as a separation from, including them into the food industry.
No, I mean, fair enough. I mean, I'm really glad that at least they're acknowledging ruminant animals are necessary to replenish the soil. Fair enough. Doesn't mean that we need to eat them, but we will.
If that answers your question.
So you're saying that animals should be exploited to rebuild the soil?
No, not at all.
Okay.
I'm saying there's a space. I'm saying that I'm not definitively saying that there's no role for animals in a vegan world, so to speak.
Well, I don't understand that because most vegans are for abolishing animal agriculture. So I'm not sure exactly what you're saying.
Animal agriculture being specifically raising animals for meat and their products.
For what?
For meat and and animals' other products and secretions.
Okay.
Other products and secretions. What do you think manure is? So manure secretion's good, but milk secretion's bad. Got it.
But what we're talking about is the damage done by crop agriculture.
It's funny that vegans will call actual milk, which actually has a definition. So vegans will call real milk excretions, but almond, soy, and all the rest of the bean juice they'll call milk. I think that's funny.
Okay. And so we have to get back to what crop agriculture produces. And in this case, it's not soy, but soybeans. And if 90% of the world's soybeans are crushed.
Jeffrey's getting annoyed. He's like, okay, we heard it. Enough with it. Enough with the pecan.
And the oil is extracted from them, and 100% of that oil is being consumed by humans, then my question still stands.
He's waiting.
If you abolish animal agriculture, okay, which is what you're saying, if you abolish animal agriculture, then how much is that going to decrease the destructive soil?
We do realize that this third episode is the same question being asked over and over. Me responding with the logical answer, and yeah. So sorry about the revolving door.
Soybean farming practice, the soybean crops. How much will the soybean crops decrease in a vegan world?
Well, there would be a higher percentage of the soybean crop used for humans.
Yeah. Okay.
Based on what?
The lack of meat.
Yeah. Okay. So what would happen is you'd still have to have the exact same amount of soy, okay, to produce the biodiesel as well as the seed oil. Now, if you would like to directly eat the bean, right, the soybean, you'd have to plant additional crops for human consumption because all of that stuff is for oil. Canada, huge exporter of canola oil. Do you think that they are going to push a campaign about all the research and give the research a platform about how horrible it is for your health? Because the nutritional science is everywhere. Sure, never tell the public about the seed oils because you want them eating Crisco, you want them eating margarine, you want them taking and frying with the seed oil. They love putting it in all the middle section, right down to the brown bread. Okay, so that's not going to change. So all the soybeans here are still going to be here. But if you want to feed it to a larger population, because we have no more actual meat, you're going to have to plant even more. And that's even more destructive. I mean, it seems to me that they're already making us eat multiple meals a day because there's no protein and fat from animals, so you're always hungry. So we're already grazing like cows. Now they want to bypass the animal food and just feed us what they were feeding the ruminant animals. So there's another aspect. And then after they're gonna, put us in feedlots called 15-minute smart cities.
So
Do you notice that animals are getting anthropomorphized and are starting to have more and more rights as humans are starting to have less and less individual rights, kind of being, injected with stuff like cattle, being fed similar subsidized grains as cattle. And by the way, all of these things like soy and corn, they're used to fatten up the cow. And I'll tell you one thing, you keep on eating all of that garbage, you will become fat.
as a protein replacement.
By removing meat, that's going to decrease soybean production?
No.
No.
Good.
Okay.
She had-
No, there is, are you saying there's no percentage of soybeans that are fed to animals?
I just said that 7% of the world's soybeans, and this is, watch me be honest, this is how it's done. 7% of the world's soybeans are fed straight to animals. They come from the
Right.
field as soybeans, and they're fed to the animals as soybeans, okay? Another 5 to 7% are grown
biodiesel.
specifically for humans. The other 90% is
Oil.
crushed, hexane extracted. The oil is extracted from the 90% of the soybeans, and 100% of that oil is consumed by humans. It's the biggest seed oil in the world. It's a huge, powerful industry that you can't go in and dictate to, and it represents 61% of the world's seed.
Which is why soybean making a profit, insane profit off of us, right? So that's why they're not talking about the harmful effects of seed oils. When they started implementing the seed oils in the early 20th century, we start all sorts of diseases, heart first, things started to go wrong. At the same time, they were also increasing the carbohydrate content since they're decreasing the fat. So when we started getting sick, instead of saying, well, we've always been eating animals, we actually prize the fat, living off the fat of the land, slaughtering the fatted calf for a festival. All of the fat-soluble vitamins seem to be in the animal fat. There's nutrients in animal food that doesn't even exist in the plant kingdom. Of course, they got, fortified food and supplements but those supplements, they're not absorbed readily. They're not bioavailable. To a certain extent, they probably are, but significantly diminished. And don't forget that supplements are supposed to supplement. You're not supposed to eat a diet where there's major nutrients devoid, where now you have to supplement, because you're not supplementing. When you do B12, you're not supplementing B12. You're not adding a surplus of B12. It's not there. So you got to come up with another vegan term for supplements. Call it food.
Seed oils. So if humans are consuming part of 90% of every soybean in the world, then by abolishing animal agriculture, how much are you going to
Guys, do you realize that this is almost 15 minutes. There's nothing that has been said besides the analogy of soybean. All of that goes for oil, leftover. Then a question, knowing that, what would happen if all the animals go? What JD's trying to hear, it's the only logical answer, is, well, it wouldn't change that much. JD doesn't point out that, don't forget, we remove the animal, so we need more plant-based protein. So what are we going to do? We're going to increase. We're not producing less soy because we're in the animals. We're actually maintaining the production for the oils, and now we need additional area, additional tillage. So it'd be horrible, with no way of naturally producing any of the fertilizer. All of it would be non-renewable resources. All of it. Because you'll need an energy source for the mining and for the manufacturing of all these synthetic and petroleum based. Well, they say gas is going to run out. So what are we going to do? And the mining, we can't mine forever.
decrease soybean croppage?
Got it. Okay. So accepting the 90%, I would like to see the source on that and look into it, but I'm going to accept it. The 90% of the world's soybeans get extracted for oil. I see the hang up here. We're focusing on soy. So I think it would but if animal agriculture were to disappear, we would see the effects in other crops more so than others. So we would see more of an effect on the decrease in consumption of corn, let's say.
obviously the
think
whole
that's-
market would be turned up on its end and everything would be changed from then on out. So
Well, now we need the statistics of how they produce corn, what it's produced for. Don't forget that the middle section of your grocery store that is only plants, processed plants, devoid of meat, of animals. There's no lard in there. You know, it's primarily plant based, and all of those things are created by primarily wheat, sugar, and seed oils. So there's a large amount of that corn. It might not be for corn on the cob, but there's a lot of there. But I'm gonna have to look into the corn one. They didn't get to the corn. They focused mostly on the soy.
for us to hypothetically answer this question would be, it would make us be, intellectually dishonest or whatever you were calling us earlier.
But I see what you're asking. You're specifically
not-
asking about soy, and I think that's where I can't tell you, okay, if 90%, like you're saying, of the world's soybeans are used and extracted for oil, how would that industry change if people were no longer consuming? I don't think the consumption would
No, he didn't say if people weren't consuming. That was never the question.
go up in oil. I don't think it would increase. But I think
It would maintain itself unless people start realizing that it's poisonous, kind of like trans fat. Then they ban it. But there's no way that they will ever ban it. You should see the amount of exportation from Canada of canola oil, which is another seed oil.
we would see the effect more in other crops such as corn.
Okay, let's talk about corn. 36% of all corn is grown specifically to feed animals.
36.
Okay, that's no small amount. 36%. Do you hear what I'm admitting to? 36% of the world's corn is grown specifically for animals. The other 74%, do you know what it's grown for?
Okay, so corn oil, high fructose corn syrup, more biodiesel.
High fructose corn syrup, I'm gonna guess.
Yes.
That's one, yeah. Who consumes high fructose corn syrup?
Everyone in the
Human beings or animals?
Yeah, humans.
Okay, the other, another large part of that is ethanol. A lot of that ethanol is being put in the gas, and that gas is driving fruits and vegetables around, and grains.
And animals and livestock.
sure.
But yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you try to blame that on livestock, you're really pointing the finger at yourself as a plant eater, because those plants also have to be transported. So that's a non-issue, right? Right.
I mean, any food, regardless if it's meat or plants, it'll have to be transported, right?
Right. So we can stop pointing at the livestock
Yeah, there's no difference. So
as requiring transportation, right?
good.
Unless you want to include your diet as part of that transport, that's taxing the transport ethanol as well.
I'm just saying they're equivalent. They both industries.
Vegans need to take responsibility for the damage that they're doing, and that's kind of why we're here.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like Ali and Jeffrey are like, okay, we agree. It's on both sides. Okay, but the problem is that usually vegans are not acknowledging that and throwing all of that on to us. Again, Jeffrey, Ali, they're vegan light, which is good. Makes them a little bit more rational than the typical vegan.
Okay, so
Right.
we won't bring up the transportation if you don't.
Good.
Well, let's not talk about the transportation, but let's talk about the fact that people are driving to work
Mhm.
and they're using ethanol gas. Okay, they're driving here and there. That ethanol is for human consumption. There is no cow. You will not see a cow driving a milk truck.
But we're discussing.
I think I have one of the children cartoons, and they're actually driving a milk truck. Which one was it? I have a lot of children cartoons. So JD, I'm gonna have to bunk that. I've seen a cow driving a milk truck. Sorry, dude. Gotta call it out, man. Misinformation.
Food.
Right. Well, we're talking about crops. We're talking about crops because the vegans like to say that the crops are all grown for the animals. And that's why we're here, is because those lies have to be destroyed. And that's what we're going to do today.
Mission accomplished, my friend JD, Mr. Garland Farms. Mission accomplished.
But it was when we agreed on the premise of this debate, it was the plant-based diet versus animal-based diet harm on the environment currently in the world.
No, human consumption. What you're trying to do is split hairs. You're trying to win a debate.
That's why we spent 2 hours on the premise.
All right. So we're 43 minutes into it. Jeffrey wakes up. You woke up, Jeffrey. Starts talking. See? By the way, I have no idea why you were so quiet. If you go on to my video when JD and Jeffrey and I were having a conversation, he was very engaged. It was a very pleasant conversation, sharing of thoughts, obviously on completely on opposite ends, but it was a relaxing. There was no tension. I don't know, Jeffrey. Please tell us what the hell happened. Why were you so quiet?
You're trying to
make sure we got down to the exact premise we were going to talk about.
Hang on, guys. Hang on.
Andrew stepping in.
I'm trying, as I'm listening here and I'm taking notes. If we're talking about the transportation of food, we're talking about the growing of food, we're talking about who consumes the food, we're talking about all those issues. That sounds, and then the diet, as far as the dietary aspect goes, and then another aspect of this is the impact that it has on the environment. So if we're talking about the vegan diet and the carnivore diet and the impact it has on the environment, then all of what's been talked about so far is totally valid.
Yeah, we were trying to only talk about
The moderator has spoken.
the environmental impact, not the health impact. And I think Garland's just an omnivore. I don't think he's a carnivore.
Not
Well, right, but I mean, if you're talking about the environmental impact of these things, then so far I don't see any problem with any of the things that have been brought
With
up.
ethanol?
Yeah, that would
Consuming
be,
ethanol as
that
food?
well, no, but that would be a necessary entailment of an environmental impact.
Copy.
Yeah, so if there's
Fair enough.
if you say, in other words, we want to talk about the diet and the impact this diet has on the world, then the necessary entailment there is everywhere that food goes, and whatever's brought up with the food as a necessary impact on the world is valid. There's no way for me to get around that.
Yeah.
So
I think so. I think that's
It was specifically harm to the environment, but I guess
No, I agree.
ultimately that works.
I was just bringing up the Garland. You were talking, I guess, the ethanol. You were discussing the transportation of plant foods, right? Is that why you're bringing that up?
No, because what I said was that 36% of the world's corn is grown specifically to feed animals, but the other 64% is grown specifically to produce goods for human consumption. And so what I keep running into
pasted
is
right in
that
this.
I point out how deadly and destructive crop agriculture is, not just corn and soybean, but apples, oranges, pears, bananas.
No fact.
You asked, well, is there any crops that's being grown specifically for animals? Yes. Yes, 14% of the crops that are fed to animals are grown specifically to feed the animals. The other 86% is industrial waste left over from the soybean industry, extracting the oil, and the corn industry. Ethanol, high fructose corn syrup, alcoholic beverages.
You're saying there's no other use for these wastes, as you call them?
I like this one over here. Grant Singman, Jason John Swartz. This debate isn't about veganism. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, eat some meat and then maybe you'll understand that this actually has a lot to do with veganism. Grant Singman.
No, I agree with you on that. I think that we can find other things to do with that. That livestock, the livestock industry needs to drop the crop industry on its head and let them deal with their own industrial wastes and get back to doing regenerative rotational grazing to begin.
Yeah, like it's true. Like right now, the crop industry is sucking out the oil and then using the waste as to make profit off of the livestock. but the livestocks have the poop, the manure, and they're not able to make the money over at the crop. At least it would be a give and take, back and forth. The high ammonia levels are not artificially, they are higher because they're not being placed as manure on the land. A lot of it has to be dealt with and is contained. And when you contain it, the parts per million can really jack up. So there are temperature, there are environmental factors that elevate ammonia. But again, I'd like to look into, besides the ruminant animals, what else is creating ammonia? Because I'm not convinced that the ammonia, the methane, and the CO2 coming from these animals is a significant factor. Uh, 47.02. Okay, so we're at 47. I think we're going to stop it there. Just before we leave, I just want to check something. EPA's emissions by sector. All right. Am I sharing? No. I wonder if my face was covered the whole time. Probably. That doesn't matter. Okay. That's what I get for trying a new setup. Present the screen. Oh, the baby's up. The baby's up, people. Good time to stop. Okay, this is from EPA US emissions 2013 to give an idea. So here's the emissions. 31% for electricity, energy, 27 for transport, 21 for industry, and 12 for commercial and residential. Out of all of these emissions, right? 9%. So all of this livestock demonization, the whole agriculture is 9%. That's including plant as well as livestock. And there is one that is more detailed that further breaks it down, and that livestock is actually 3% of that 9% of emissions and 6% for plant agriculture. Not sure if I can find that. Agriculture. I have to find it again, but at least we can acknowledge that large amount. What's this one look like? Oh, no, it's different sectors. It's not. Anyways, so I just wanted to point out this one, that all of this is 9%. Okay. All right. God bless. The end of episode 3. Episode 4 is coming your way soon enough. All right. God bless.